Hello everyone, we're doing another feed drop today, and I'd like to introduce you to a show I think you might enjoy called Murder, She Told. Murder, She Told is carefully crafted with straightforward storytelling and deep archival research, and often includes clips from original interviews with people close to the case, like family members and law enforcement. This is the type of show that digs into old newspapers and police records to feature a lot of unsolved cases from the 1970s to the mid-2000s. Murder, She Told is created and hosted by Kristen Seavey, a certified victims advocate who narrates each episode with empathy. Though it focuses on a lot of cases from New England, its stories are deeply human and universal. Most episodes are around 45 minutes, and there are over 120 episodes waiting for you. I actually still remember the first time Kristen got in touch with me and introduced herself and her show about 3 years ago. I'm sure you know that The Trail Went Cold has provided extensive coverage on the infamous Boys on the Track case, where teenagers Don Henry and Kevin Eyes were found murdered on some railroad tracks in Arkansas in 1987. Well, at the time Kristen contacted me, Murder, She Told had just released an episode about the Cape Breton 3, a far less known Boys on the Track style case about 3 young men from Nova Scotia who crossed the border into Maine in 1970 and were found dead under suspicious circumstances on some railroad tracks. This definitely established Murder, She Told as a show that focused on stories which ordinarily did not get a lot of attention. Like The Trail Went Cold, Murder, She Told covers a lot of cases you aren't hearing on other podcasts and probably haven't even heard of before. Kristen is also an Unsolved Mysteries fan, so you'll even hear some familiar cases featured on the original show, such as the disappearance of Curtis Bachon. Although some episodes feature solved cases, there is a heavy focus on unsolved cases, with the hopes that perhaps you may be able to solve the mystery. I'm now going to play a short clip featuring a recent episode from November of 2024 on the unsolved case of Ludger Belanger, who went missing while hunting in Maine in 1975. Though on the surface it seemed like he vanished without a trace, tracks in the snow led detectives to a crucial piece of evidence and into a high-stakes game of cat and mouse with 2 men who might know exactly where to find him. After listening to Ludger's story, I recommend scrolling back to March of 2024 to give the episode on Reeves Johnson a listen. This is a baffling missing persons case that Kristen works on side by side with the current detective. That episode will give you an intimate behind-the-scenes look of what it's like reinvigorating a cold case from 1983 where the trail went cold. Click the links in the show notes to hear the full episode on Ludger Belanger and follow Murder, She Told wherever you get your podcasts. Enjoy our sneak preview.
Linda Belanger was furious. Her husband was supposed to have been home at 11 a.m. to take her to work, and now it was 11:30 a.m., and she was going to be late. She was scheduled to be at work at noon at a Chinese restaurant about 30 minutes away. The couple only had one car between the two of them, and while the car was in their driveway, he was nowhere to be found. Linda didn't feel comfortable driving the car in the snow, and winter had already started closing in. The roads were white, having been recently coated with a few days of snow. Linda and her husband, Ludger, had gotten an early start that morning, hunting together near their house in rural Washington, Maine. It was Tuesday, November 25th, 1975, just 2 days before Thanksgiving. Neither of them had yet bagged a deer, and it was closing in on the end of the hunting season. Some fresh venison would be a fine way to save on grocery bills and feed their growing family through the early winter. Ludger was 25 and Linda was 21, and together they had 3 young daughters. Linda had returned home to get ready for work, but Ludger still wanted to hunt until it was time for her to go, and he was dropped off alone about a mile from their home. The plan was for him to slowly hunt his way home over the next 2 hours. As the minutes passed, her anger grew. She figured that he just lost track of time. Linda and Ludger's family went out in the cold, snowy morning on snowmobiles searching for him, stopping periodically and calling his name. But there came no reply. As time passed, Linda's anger changed into concern, and then into fear. She kept thinking of the husband she dearly loved. Ludger was a hard-working, salt-of-the-earth Mainer. He had wavy brown hair and a goatee that was a little sparse, perhaps drawing more attention to his young face. The Maine Warden Service became involved right away. Linda made a compelling case. How could a responsible and healthy 25-year-old man who was an experienced hunter just vanish 1 mile from home? Perhaps he needed help. The next morning, the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, the wardens began their search, starting at sunup and carefully retracing Ludger's steps. A helpful witness had just seen where Ludger had entered the forest, so they followed his lead. Though the new fallen snow had partially obscured the prints, they were able to follow his footsteps through the forest, and they discovered 2 discharged rifle rounds. Following the trail further, they found the imprint of a fallen deer, a large buck by the looks of it. Some of its remains were left behind, frozen on the ground. It had been field dressed in that very spot. From there, they saw that the deer had been dragged toward the nearest road called Creamerlot Road. The footprints and drag marks of the buck ended at a set of tire tracks. Someone, or someones, had picked him up. It looked as though the buck had been loaded into the trunk and Ludger had gotten into the cabin. There were only 1 set of tire tracks on Creamerlot Road. They came in, and then they went right back out. But who was driving that vehicle? There were no clues. There were no witnesses. They were in the Maine woods, surrounded by only pine trees. Even the tread that was once imprinted in the snow in perfect relief, something that might have given a clue as to the model of the car, was obscured by the new snow. It was a dead end. And just as hope began to wane, one of the men felt something crunch under his boot. Brushing the new snow aside, he found it, a receipt from a nearby shop, Walker's Garage, and it was very recent. Its date read Tuesday, November 25th, the day prior, the same day that Ludger had disappeared. It had the make and model of the car, a 1965 Buick Special. And, most importantly, there was a name written upon it, the name of the man who would become a primary suspect. The name, David Svenningsson. The story of Ludger Belanger is tantalizingly close to resolution, and it's tragic. Join me as we follow the investigation as it winds its way through time. Unlike in many adult missing persons cases, the Maine State Police will rapidly become involved. Investigators will penetrate suspects' lies. The automobile at the center of the story will go missing and will soon be discovered with its upholstery ripped out and its cabin meticulously cleaned. The evidence will pile up, and one of the suspects will end up at death's door at a burn unit in San Antonio in an insurance fraud murder plot gone awry. I'm Kristen Seavey, the host and creator of Murder, She Told. If you want to hear the rest of Ludger's story, you can find it on the Murder, She Told feed published November 19th, 2024. And there's over 120 episodes waiting for you as well. Thank you so much for listening, and you can find Murder, She Told wherever you get podcasts.